Welcome to the Reading Rift. I'm your host, Lydia Legacy, and today I have the privilege of speaking with author K.R. Paul about her newest book that just was released on March 20th, The Ballad of Ashes in Spring, a Hades Persephone retelling that you just have to read. Thank you so much for being here and talking with me today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to talk about the book.
Me too. I was like, I had responsibilities, but I found myself like, wait, I gotta find out what's gonna happen to this in this story. So I was like, responsibilities, go over here. So this is a spoiler-free episode for listeners. We're gonna get to know K.R. Paul. We're gonna talk about self-publishing, and we're gonna discuss my favorite part about the book that's still spoiler-free, but it's how you write romance a little bit differently, how there's choice involved in that, and there's a lot of intent in your romance, how you write it, a little bit different. And then I also want to talk about a topic that I've been thinking about a lot lately is kind of the relationship between service members and the creative arts and why they need to know that it's okay that they do those things. So stay tuned for a really great episode. First, we're going to talk about your background. And I always want to know, did someone think they would be where they are when they were growing up? So growing up, did you think you were going to be having a military career and be a writer?
I think every kid grows up thinking, I'm going to be a police officer and a firefighter and an astronaut and a fighter pilot. And in my mind, I wanted to be an astronaut and an author. Turns out I'm wearing contacts. And with my eyes, I was never going to be like a test pilot or anything like that. But I did the next best thing. I was a navigator on combat aircraft, which is awesome. And at the same time as I was doing that, there's a lot of drone time back and forth between places. And I had time to either write or edit or whatever while I was airborne, which is, I guess, a very different way to do your author career. So while I don't think I would have said, oh yeah, I'm totally going to do that, I definitely wanted to as a kid. And definitely as a teenager, of Buffy and X-Files fan fictions that I probably should have known what was coming.
Oh, that's so funny. Okay, I love hearing people's fan fiction, like reading it or writing it and how it kind of like, you're like, wait, I love this and I have to keep doing this. So how does your military background affect your writing? Because I am married to a Marine, so I saw some things in your book that I thought were really funny coming from a wife of a military personnel, which one was when you were talking about in your book, there's someone that gets sort of kidnapped and he's like, I didn't kidnap you. You were tactically acquired. And that's like a big thing with my husband when he came home from boot camp. He was like, no, I didn't take it. It's tactically acquired. And so I just want to hear about how does your experience in that field affect the way you write books that have politics and military and strategy a little bit maybe differently?
Well, of course, the first thing I have to say is that everything I'm saying right now, this is a personal interview. This doesn't reflect the Air Force, the DoD, DOW, whatever we are this week. So all these opinions are my own and do not reflect their opinions. So please, nobody report me to an IG or anything. With that said, my gosh, there is just, as you noted, like there's a very specific linguistic shift inside the military from like civilian life. So things like tactically acquired. That's a really nice way of saying I took something. I didn't steal it. I did take it. I'm not saying I would ever do anything like that and can't prove that it happened, but I'm familiar with the term.
Awesome. And reading your bio, I saw that you do a lot of cosplay. So I wanted to ask what are some of your most memorable cosplay adventures that you've pursued?
Oh, great question. So I find that cosplay works really well in one of two ways. It's something that is completely recognizable. So one of my favorites is I've done Wonder Woman. I used to have much longer hair. And with like long brown hair, and I was a bodybuilder at the time, like you just look like the character and kids will run up to you and they're like, oh my God, Wonder Woman. You're like, yeah, sure, kid. Okay, come on, let's do a picture, whatever it is you want right now. And the other ones are when you can take two different things that like are completely separate and blend them together. One of my favorite cosplays I ever did, it was my ex-husband, my daughter, and I. And of course, my daughter had a huge say in this. She wanted to combine Frozen with Star Wars. So she was Anakin Skywalker. My ex-husband was Hans Solo. So he had like the white tuxedo jacket and then the pants, and like I made the whole thing, you know. And then I was Queen Elsa, slave Elsa. So I had the whole like, I mean, I'm talking like I did the whole like shaping the plastic and everything for that that bikini. And instead of gold, though, it was silver and blue. And then I had a white wig and like the whole thing and everything. So that one was just fun because it's such a great creative outlet.
And it's fun that you did it with your kid. Like I
Yeah.
love, and my kids, I have two little kids, but like even now when we start to kind of do things together, I'm like living the dream. So when you get to kind of do that with your family, I feel like that adds a level of personal connection to it. So that's so
Yeah.
cool. Okay, now I want to talk about more like specific to writing and reading topics, but did you grow up reading in a reading household or did you kind of discover books on your own?
Did I grow up in a reading household? Not really. I still remember that I had a copy of Anne McCaffrey's like first trilogy for the Dragon Riders series. My father had given it to me. Honestly, it might be one of the few things I still have left from him because he was out about the time I was 12. And despite some harsh feelings for that, I still enjoyed the book. And later, I really just enjoyed the escapism of it, right? Like, wasn't always the greatest childhood, didn't always have people there for me, but the books always were. And when you have the opportunity to just escape into that kind of world while still balancing, like holding the tension between reality and fantasy, it's probably one of the best forms of therapy out there.
Totally agree with that. So like in my adult years, I was going through kind of a hard time with my fertility and just like mental health of like the shift you go through when you're a mom and you're postpartum and you're like, I don't actually know who I am anymore.
Yep.
And I this is when my husband brought home Fourth Wing and we brought home like ACOTAR and we started reading all these romantasy books. And I was like starting to find myself again in these fiction books. And I was like, I thought I had to read a self-help book. I thought I had to read like a boring book about, I don't know, history in order for me to grow or to heal. So I love fantasy. I love talking to fantasy authors too, where they're like, writing this book was the best form of therapy for me, or like there was nothing else that would have healed me in the way of writing the story. So I totally relate to that, what you said. Who are your author idols now as an adult? Who are people that you really love the way that they create and you kind of try to take some inspiration from them?
I would say my first love from reading like authors is probably always going to be Anne McCaffrey, right? Like the whole Dragon Rider series. I mean, gosh, there was 15 to 20 books in that whole series, and I probably read all of them up until she handed things off to her son. And I think I read one of those books and I was like, oh, I think we're done now. And it was interesting because it really pointed out that it was a craft and you can't just walk in and pick it up and expect to be the master on it. Like you have to work at this. And speaking of like masters of the craft, the other one that I would absolutely say, Terry Pratchett, the whole Discworld series, he had the most amazing way. It was almost like charm and disarm, right? Like he could spell something out for you that pointed out one of the greatest societal ills. And like, it didn't matter what side of the fence you were on. He had a way that was so charming and so interesting to point that out that he could pick at some of the like deepest issues in society and still bring you on board. And I loved that. I respected that. I have a couple of chapters in leadership books, and the two that I've written, there was really that like the same aim. Like, how do I put this together in a way that it's accessible to anyone? And of course, one of them I brought in Star Wars, and the other one I brought in like the Marvel universe, right? And so I definitely have to say that I respected Sir Terry Pratchett for his ability to make something not even ephemeral. Like it was so real. It was so real. It was painful, but he could make it accessible to everyone.
I love when an author makes something so real that it's painful. I love a good painful reality check or like a painful realization when I'm reading a book. I read to escape, but I also read to like learn about the world or learn about myself or just learn about different people and different ways of thinking. So I love that too. Was there ever a teacher or a librarian or an adult figure in your life, maybe even as an adult, maybe like a friend or something that really pushed you towards, hey, I think you're really good at storytelling and writing. You should consider something like this?
Definitely. What's interesting is I think I was 2 books deep into publishing, and I had met another author, and I definitely consider him one of my mentors. It's James L. Young, Dr. James Young, and he writes in the alternate like fiction, alternate history kind of area. So we have 2 very different genres, but he was going to be the editor for a sci-fi anthology, and he had read my books, and he's like, you're really good, and I think that you can do this. And I know you well enough from talking to you on Twitter and Facebook that I know you're a huge sci-fi nerd. So give me what you got. 7,000 to 8,000 words. Let's go. And I'm like, oh man, I don't write sci-fi. Like, that's not my thing. Okay, but allow me a couple of tropes, right? Next thing I know, I'm writing like it was almost like fan fiction, right? Like they're soulbound and they can't harm each other across the battlefield, and they find love in the worst circumstances. But I figured out a way to write that in sci-fi, and I think that was exactly what James saw in me. And to this day, like, he's still a really great mentor. I talk to him and I'm like, hey, I'm going to this convention, or hey, I can't afford conventions anymore. I got to do something else. He's like, well, what about local stuff, right? And so he really helped me develop my career from that standpoint.
That's awesome. I love when someone has a mentor, because mentors can help so much if you have someone you trust and that believes in you, because any space really is hard to understand. If you haven't written a book yourself, or even like you want to become a teacher, you're like, how do I do that? Just anything, you're like, if you don't have someone helping you, it's so much like harder. So I love that you had someone that helped a little bit. But I know from watching my husband write, it really doesn't matter how many YouTube videos you watch or how many podcasts you listen to. You're going to have to figure out how you're going to make it work, how you're going to make a career out of this thing. So when did you notice for you that writing was something deeper? It wasn't just a hobby. I love writing. It's, oh, this is something that I feel called to do, or like, I have to do this. I got the bug. I can't get out of this writing.
Obviously, like the first foray into this was fan fiction. I loved writing that way, but it's like a shortcut, right? I don't have to do the character exposition. I don't have to do the plot exposition. Like, everybody, if you're reading about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you've seen at least a couple episodes. Like, let's just hop in, let's go, like, we're writing about this. And this is where I'm like really glad we did the little boilerplate at the front. The first time I know that I ever sat down and was like, okay, what would I write about? I came from B-52s, which are a nuclear asset. And so we have to go through a really high level of training, and it is dry. It is super dry, and the brain will wander. And so it did. And my brain starts wandering about the time we're talking through some things that are kind of horrific. Like, we're talking end of the world. And while that ended up in the first full novel that I wrote, which is completely unpublished, and I would have to massively triage it because this was like 2009. I can't publish it like it is. Now that you have seen the book and people are reading it, like, you can see some of the fingerprints of like that initial, hey, what happens when? What happens when the end of the world happens? And I'm very careful. I tiptoe along a gentle line of, I don't talk about nuclear weapons. But if you're reading it for depth, you're understanding it's the pre, trans, and post-nuclear apocalyptic timeline. And that's not really like a spoiler. That's just kind of like, that's the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I really, those days just stuck in a vault or stuck in an aircraft, and I've got nowhere to go, and I just have all this time in my hand. And I'm starting to write all of these things down. I mean, like, stacks and stacks and stacks of pages that I've written. And I'm like, wow, this isn't just like a thing that I just kind of want to do. Like, I am passionate about this. And if I weren't passionate about it, like, I wouldn't have so many pages of writing.
And you find you keep going back to it. Like, it's not like, I did it for a summer. It's like, I keep finding myself coming back to writing stories, and you're like, there's probably something here that I should not ignore. On writing, what is the part about writing that you think challenges you the most?
Oh my God, editing. Hands down, editing. Oh my gosh. Like, a couple of years ago, I probably would have said the actual plot construction. Since then, I've worked out a good system that it works for me. It wouldn't work for everybody, but like, how I go from here's an idea, a vibe, if you will. Mm-hmm. Okay, here's a full plot arc. Here's broken down by acts. Here's broken down by chapters. Now that I have that part down, oh my gosh, I'm terrible at grammar. I need so much help. I think the biggest part of my budget is always my editor. Bless her, she does good work. Mm-hmm. I need a lot of help there. It's hard. In my process, like, I will write the whole thing, and then I will go back and I will do edits for the plot, and then I will go back and then I will do my grammar edits. And that's where I realized that I should probably just pay extra money and hand it over to her and have her fix this because I'm so terrible at it.
That's exactly how my husband writes his book. So he'll write the draft. It's so messy. And then he'll like, okay, now I'm going to go back and fix some plot points. And at that point, he gives it to me I'm his first like grammar editor before we pay somebody to edit it. Because I'm also not good at grammar. I'm just a second pair of eyes. So it's like, okay, wow, this was really rough, honey, but your plot's really great. So I think like a big misconception that I had about writing, about someone publishing a book, was that they do it all by themselves and that you have to be skilled in every single like category. Otherwise, like you can't do it. But I didn't know how much of a team goes into beta readers and people that do the line edits. That was a term I learned, and people that do the cover art and all these different people that you have to find. And they're like assets. You're like, oh, I found a good beta reader. I'm going to like keep this person happy, because it's hard to find people that you can rely on and that show up and actually respond to your emails. So what part of writing would you say is your favorite?
Probably like the creative and the development part. I spend an inordinate amount of time like coming up with the plot before I ever write anything down. So my very first book was Pantheon, and at the time I was stationed at Maxwell in Alabama, and my family lived at Barksdale in Shreveport, Louisiana, and so they were about 7.5 hours apart. And every third weekend, I would drive 7.5 hours each way, and this was in like the pre-streaming music era, right? Excuse me. So there was no podcast. There was no like, it was, hey, what's on my iPhone playlist that I've downloaded and paid for? And when that runs out, the imagination needs to start. And so for that very first book, I sat there, and as I'm driving 7.5 hours each way, I remember thinking, I'm like, man, I just wish I could teleport here. Okay, that's actually a really cool idea. All right, what's the drawback? All right, calories? Oh, man, I'd get skinny quick. Oh, okay, that's not really that bad. Okay. And as I'm going through each iteration of this, it's like the plot is getting tighter and tighter, and I'm going, okay, I know how my magic works. I know what the drawback is, because of course you can't have magic that's unfettered. There's always a drawback, because that makes for good plot. And so I had so much fun as I'm driving back and forth, coming up with this plot and coming up with the ideas. And I feel like I'm pretty confident saying that every writer enjoys the creative process. Like, that's what draws you to writing. Like, you get a quarter of the way into one book and you're like, oh, another idea. Oh, a vibe. I don't have a plot. I just have a vibe, but I want to go with it. Right. So we all just like want to bite off on that. And it's really not until you've been doing it for a little bit of time and you're a little more disciplined where you feel like, okay, great idea. I'm going to write it down real quick and we'll come back to this. It's going to be like 2 years because I'm working on this, but we're going to come back to it.
I love the writer's mind because like my husband, he'll have this idea, and then the next thing I know, he's like, read this 100 pages. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you were just talking about this a few days ago. But it's like there's so much in your own mind that you have to get it out on a notepad or paper or in your phone so that your mind can like continue to come up with new ideas, because you'll fixate. You'll be like, oh, like this idea is going to stay in my head until I've got it out. So
oh my gosh.
I love watching the writer mind.
That first story, so it was 7 months. I think it was August to March, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It was in the middle of March Madness in 2016, 17, no, 16, sorry. So like a decade ago. And I'd gone back and forth with the story for so long. Like, I had constructed the whole thing in my brain. And one morning I got up, family's in another state. So I'm not having to make breakfast. I'm just getting up and doing my own thing. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to write it down. 15 hours and 12 chapters later, I had the first probably half of that book done in a day. And it's just, again, like you said, that writer's mind. I knew everything. I had been constructing this plot in my brain for months. I knew exactly where it was going. I knew exactly how it ended. And it's like high points. And so like once you're sitting down and the fingers start going, it flowed like water.
I think once you can start writing a book and then you can keep going, that's when you're like, okay, maybe maybe I have a little bit of skill or like I know how to do this like subconsciously because I personally have had book ideas. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to sit down and write this. My husband, I've seen you do this. It's so easy. So I'm going to sit down and write my book idea. And then I'm like 2 paragraphs in and I'm like, yeah, that was all I had for that. So I think it's like you got 15 hours of writing in and you're like, I could keep going or this is great. And so it's like
I
you were
stopped because
meant
I
to
was
do that.
exhausted.
Yeah. No, writers don't get exhausted. Um, okay. So now I want to talk about publishing because this is like the mysterious part of writing that I love to hear about. So what was the process like for you to decide I want to self-publish or I want to try to traditionally publish?
Oh man, what a convoluted story for me. When it comes to my publishing journey, it was all over the map. So early on in my career, and I'm talking like my Air Force career, not my writing career, I had that one book. I mean, and it was done. I had edited it. I did not have a chance to put it with a paid editor because I just didn't have that kind of money early in my career, but it was done. I think it's still like, it's probably 60,000 words at this point in time. And it's a tight plot. Maybe it needs a B plot, but it was done. And I threw it at, gosh, I think I got somewhere near like 20 or 30 literary agents and nobody would take me on. And it wasn't because it was a bad book. It was that I could not commit to having a book every 18 months. And for them to be commercially viable, you needed to be able to produce at that level. This is 2008 and 9. And what happened in 2010 was 10 and 12, Amazon's ability to self-publish came out. And that's when 50 Shades of Grey came out. And all of a sudden, somebody who was a fan fiction writer went mainstream and self-published, just exploded. And all of a sudden, Amazon realizes that they have a hot market. If they can find the good ones, if they can find that little nugget of corn in the pile of poo, right? Just that one is all they need to make a ton of money. And so the whole publishing game changed. And you didn't really need a literary agent unless you were hardcore. You wanted one of the big six. Now it's the big five, but at the time, big six. In 2018, so 8 years later, I'm on Twitter, right? Because everybody's on Twitter at the time. Mostly military Twitter, right? Because that was just kind of where we were all congregating. And I had another author reach out and he went, hey, I saw that you had a book. Do you want to go one for one? I'll read yours and comment. You read mine and comment. And I'm like, yeah, sure, of course. Professional courtesy, right? And I got his book. Great book. I offered a couple of comments like, hey, by the way, if you're going to talk about your female main character, you probably don't want to give her a specific weight. Like, give a visual, but don't say, hey, she's 5'10" and 120 pounds, because all of a sudden you just lost every female reader. And he took that really well. He was really good. And he gave me some really great ideas for my book at the time. And I took those to heart and I like cleaned it up and tightened it up. And so it was 2018. And in 2019, around November, he goes, hey, by the way, I still remember your book. And I am now the editor for a publishing house. And we're trying to build up our authors. I would love to have you come on board. And I'm like, oh, okay, great, thanks. That sounds nice. I don't really believe it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, thanks. He's like, are you willing to send me your physical address? And I'm like, oh man, creepy guy. But he's like, I just want to send you a copy of my book. I'm like, all right, fine. And I'm like, you're not going to show up at my house. Okay, cool. He sends me his book, a couple other people's books. So I get like this just big package, and tucked inside his book is a handwritten letter from the publishing house owner that says, hey, we really and truly want to publish this many books in 2020, and we really want your book. Like, it's really good. And I'm like, well, if you were going to take the time to send me a book with like a handwritten card, okay, fine. And so I went into, I can't really say traditional publishing. It was more hybrid because they're not like one of the big five. But, I got a contract. I got an advance. It was 3 books I was going to publish with them. And I mean, this is about as traditional as it gets without being a big five. And then it all changed. So I was delighted, right? Like, lightning only strikes once. I published 2 books with them. And I still remember, same guy, same editor, sometime between 2021, which was when the second book published, and 22, he sent me a text message and he's like, "Hey, can I give you a call?" I'm like, if it was something small, you would just text. So yeah, all right, hold on, give me 2 minutes. I'm in my office. I just have to walk downstairs. And there I am. I'm standing just outside the stairwell in this big military facility. And he calls me. He's like, "Hey, I want you to hear it from me." And I'm like, oh God. Because I still owed one more book and a 3-book contract. And I'm like, oh God, man, what's up? He goes, "Publishing house is closing down. We are terminating all contracts and all of your rights revert." And while that was a tragedy, like, right, every author that was under that publishing house, like, that is a personal tragedy to have lost something like that. The greatest thing that I could possibly get out of this is that all of my intellectual property rights reverted to me. I own them, and I could turn around within 6 months. I have my rights reversion memo. I've got new covers. I've got a new ISBN, and now I am winging it, but I am publishing under my own name and publishing house. And now I have 2 books that have been published under my own publishing house. The 3rd one in that series, and of course, now the Ballad of Ashes in Spring from the 20th, that was under my publishing house as well. There's good and there's bad, right? Like, the good part of it is that I have absolute creative control over everything. I love my editor, and he had a really great, like, ideas and commentary, and he really helped flesh out my first 2 books. Some of the things I'm like, I don't know if I would actually make that change, but I don't feel like I have the ability to say no. And now it's like, the editor that I use, I pay you. If I don't like it, I'm not going to do it. For good or for ill, right? Like, I don't have a committee. Like, there's no committee telling me, hey, this is good or bad. So you just kind of, like, you roll with what you got. And so we'll see, like, as the publishing numbers come out, like, did I make the right choice, or should I try to go back into more traditional publishing? So I've really been all over the map.
Yeah.
I'm still like, I'm on the fence. Like, I don't know what's better. I had more help. I mean, down to the really administrative details of, like, the formatting, the editing, those types of things, gathering ISBNs to now I pay for everything myself, but then all of my royalties come back to me specifically. For any other author out there trying to find their way without a literary agent, because those have kind of dried up now, right? Because anybody can publish on KDP. Anybody can publish on Ingram Spark. Anybody can publish on Draft to Digital, right? Like, there's a lot of different avenues for that, but you better be prepared with a really good book and a really good hook and a really good cover. But it's a lot of extra work that authors weren't doing before.
Yeah, that's such an interesting experience that you had, because you kind of experienced, I would call that a traditional deal, especially if you've got like an advance and a team that you're working with. And then to have it like taken away, and then you're like, I'm going to try this other route. And it's just kind of all like, even to you, still a big mystery. Like, you're like, I've done both and I'm still not sure what's going on 100% all the time. So it's like, how does anyone get into this? You know how you do it is you just go and you just
Yeah,
try.
you just do it.
The only way you're going to figure it out is if you try, instead of just like waiting for something to happen. You have to go out and just whatever. Fuck it.
Sometimes
I'm going
good
to
is good
try.
enough, right?
What misconceptions did you have about the publishing process before you got started?
Oh God. The misconceptions that I had before I got started were that this was easy and that I could just go out, write a book, hand it off to an editor, hand it off to a publisher, send it out into the world, and it would make $1 trillion. Instead, oh my gosh, there is so much marketing involved. I think I probably spend half my time marketing, which, if you're an extrovert, super easy, right? Like, you just go out, you're like, oh, hey, I'm on social media. Hello, let me talk about my book. If you're an introvert, oh boy, that is a stretch. That is difficult to do. And you're out there every day hoping for the best. So the marketing side was definitely more than I thought I would have to do. And just, especially now that I'm doing it on my own without a publisher, the back end admin. Honestly, the writing, even the editing, is easy compared to like the back end editing, like just formatting your own book, a paperback, an ebook, a hardcover. It's so many painful hours of meticulous detail.
Yeah, self-published authors are wearing so many hats, but I hope that it's always worth it for that, like retaining those rights to your work. I hope that you feel that it's going to be way worth it for that, at least. What do you wish that readers understood about supporting authors?
I think The thing I would want to tell my readers that would be just the most support is you don't have to spend money. You don't have to spend money to support an author. If you have a favorite author and you follow them on social media, repost, like, subscribe, retweet, whatever, comment. Those little things, I don't think readers understand how important that is in a completely algorithm driven kind of social media scheme. Going in and writing reviews is probably the next thing I would say is the most important, because one brings you visibility to new readers and the other one brings you visibility on the platforms that are selling your book. I think people completely underestimate even one sentence. If a reader can get on and take 30 seconds to write one sentence and click however many stars, if it is an honest one sentence and it's an honest star rating, I'll take it. If you hated the book, I'll still take it. Like, if nothing else, constructive criticism is great. I'll go fix it in the next one. And just even that, the level of engagement helps drive the algorithms to put it in front of somebody else who may or may not love it.
I think that's really good advice, because obviously, as a reader, I want to be able to buy everybody's book, especially now that I'm friends with so many authors. I'm like, okay, actually, I don't have the pocket to just buy 30 books a month, you guys.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't have that. But what I can do is I can repost, I can comment, and I can like share it to my story and like tell people about the books that I'm reading. Like, I always tell my book club, I'm like, I read this book and this book. I really recommend it. And I've had people go and read the books and tell their friends. So it's like, if you can't buy it, that's fine. There's other ways to support. So I think that's really good advice. That is,
Well,
it's
and
free, it's easy.
I think that's one of the things I really learned too, especially last year. I did a lot of trying to find ads that worked for me. And the answer is that they don't. If you are an author, ads will never work for you, because think about the last book that you bought. Did you get it from word of mouth or did you get it from an ad?
I got it from word of mouth.
Right? I cannot buy word of mouth exposure. I have to just write a good book and find one person to get out there and say, I loved it. Let me tell my friends about it. Let me retweet it. Let me do whatever. And so I still remember like the Hunger Games. Gosh, I was out running with a friend and she's like, oh, I just finished this and it was really good. I'm going to go buy the other book. And I'm like, I've never heard of this, and went out, bought the book. 3 days later, I'm buying the next book and then the next book. And it's like, there was no ad that was going to reach me. I just had to hear it from a friend that I trusted, that I liked, even somebody that I maybe don't like. I'd be like, man, I hear everybody here talking about this one. All right, I'll do it. Man, this is amazing. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your enemies. We're not picky. Just tell somebody.
I love that. Okay, speaking of your book, I want to talk about spoiler-free teasers about the Ballad of Ashes in Spring, okay? What is your elevator pitch to a new reader?
If you love Greek mythology, if you were that nerdy kid that grew up with Greek mythology and you want to find a way to enjoy it in a somewhat more modern setting, make it a little spicy and a little bit darker, maybe a little post-apocalyptic, do I have a book for you?
If readers enjoy these 3 books, then they'll enjoy your book.
Neon Gods, Hades x Persephone, the whole series by Scarlett St. Clair. Gosh, I don't know what a third book would be for that. I think maybe like a little bit of the Sweetest Oblivion, just because there's that she's not super feisty. Like, she's got some spine to her, but there's still a sweetness that I think you see in Sweetest Oblivion that you don't see in some of the other stories like Den of Vipers, right? She's just hard, right? She is calloused. And in mine, it's softer, right? It's not that calloused.
Yeah, I really loved your female main character, because she was obviously very educated, very smart. She knew how to administratively run a lab. She knew how to do all these things, and she didn't let people boss her around. But that doesn't mean that she was like in your face, or it was very subtle of, I know who I am and what I'm going to do. But she also had a lot of external pressures that you'll find out in the book. So what is the origin story for your book?
Great question. So the origin story, I've always loved Hades and Persephone. If you look at the majority of Greek mythology couples, oh man, it's cheating, it's betrayal, it's murder. And I wanted to pick a couple that was the least problematic because I love Greek mythology. And I think every other nerd that loves Percy Jackson or Xena Warrior Princess, even probably Battlestar Galactica, right? Like the new ones. If you loved those things, you're going to love it because I loved it. And that was like, that helped drive this. But I wanted everything to be a little bit like in the relationship side, just a tiny bit softer. I wanted drama, but not like, I didn't want to make you cry. And I wanted readers to always know in their mind that everything was not just consensual, but like enthusiastically consensual.
Mhm.
That was really important to me because so much of Greek mythology is really problematic. And there are a lot of things. I'm looking at you, Zeus, where you're like, oh, that's not good at all. That's in
Mhm.
fact illegal by today's standards.
Yeah, I love that. Where did your love of Greek mythology start? And then why do you think it never left?
Oh gosh. So I was that nerd, like when kids get the chance, are you going to track dinosaurs, Egyptology, Greek mythology, or Legos? I actually started down the Egyptology path. I ran out of books in my local library and did a hard turn towards Greek mythology. Had a lot more of that available. And then in my school district, we actually covered Greek mythology later on in the school years. So what I loved was being fed by my own school. Even earlier than Greek mythology, we did like the Epic of Gilgamesh. So we were all over Mesopotamia and beyond. And I think those stories just stuck with me, partially because some of them are so different from like standard American culture. And then there were enough things in American pop culture that it just kind of kept driving it, right? Like I said, Xena Warrior Princess goes into the new Battlestar Galactica. We had Hercules, the cartoon. Hercules, the live action, like, right? There was so much there. Now, even Percy Jackson, right? There's just, it keeps going. And so it's just been in the American consciousness and just, it just doesn't leave. It's still there.
Yeah, it never leaves you once you start learning about. And I think in my adult years, I'd forgotten a lot about what I had learned. And so I love kind of relearning things with like a modern twist. That's why I loved your book because I didn't really know much about Hades and Persephone because I feel like we mostly focused on a lot of the other gods. Like I feel like we always talk about Zeus and Poseidon and we just like Hades underworld. I'm like, okay, what else is there with that? And can you set the scene spoiler free for the book? So kind of set the
Oh.
scene of what is the state of the world at the beginning of the book and where are our main characters at?
A great question. So, setting the scene for my readers, let's start with the big picture, right? In the broader picture of my world, this is not our world. So, this is not the universe that we live in. And Persephone lives in a much smaller nation, and she's surrounded by two bigger powers. She's got the forces of Poseidon and the sons of Zeus, representing two different nations, and they are literally on the brink of an attack. Um, and so as she is starting off this journey, you can tell in the background and on TV, you're seeing just a little bit of this conflict, but that's not her focus. She is a bioengineer. She's world renowned. She is literally a prodigy. And so her focus is on her plants and what she's growing because the plants that she is growing are helping to literally feed the world. And she does understand her importance and her place in the world. However, it's a little bit of World War II, right? And they're talking about like, may every man brush his elbow on Brussels as he makes the turn, right? So they know that they have to come through her tiny nation to attack one another. And forces around her recognize that and say, hey, look, you're literally world renowned. There will not be another mind like yours in the next generation. And that has to be protected. And that is when exterior forces come in to effectively save her, like maybe against her will, maybe not, and extract her from the war that is coming. And literally, like, it is on her heels as she is making her way out. And from there, she has to find her place in her new circumstances. And the leverage that she has is the knowledge, information, and expertise that she carries, that world renowned scientist brain. But she is trying to use that to leverage a place in a world and a culture that she does not understand. And so you get a lot of friction there. And that's the best part about writing, finding that friction and figuring out how you go from there.
Mm-hmm. I really loved the okay, it's like, okay, we understand why maybe what happens to her is good, or like, okay, yes, but because of her background of her kind of having a very controlling mother figure, her life was always meticulously planned and guarded, and she didn't really have very much agency or choice in her
Mhm.
life. And that really plays into the depth of what happens in the book, where she's kind of taken into this new situation. And yes, we're grateful, but also there's still more to life that she's figuring out. And that
Mhm.
in the book, she gets to explore how does she set those boundaries for herself in her own way and while she's learning about herself. So I love that. So, what do you want people to learn from your female main character?
I think the biggest thing is that no matter where somebody tells you you are and what you can be, it's still up to you to decide who you are, what your position is, and what you want to give back to your society. You don't have to just take the position that's given.
Yeah,
You can
definitely.
make your own position.
Yeah, and you can kind of figure out what truth is going to be. Like, you're told what the truth is, but you have to, at some point in your life, figure out how to determine that yourself. And that's a skill that everybody needs to figure out. What do you want people to learn from your male main character?
Graciousness. I think that the greatest thing that I would ask from a man like that is it doesn't matter the amount of perceived power that you have. You still deal with everyone as an individual. You still respect their boundaries and you still work within those boundaries. No is no, and that's a full sentence. And yes is still maybe, and you keep checking. And
Mhm.
that's why we look for enthusiastic consent in this.
Yes. And I know you have some experience in leadership, and obviously the military teaches a lot about leadership. But to be a good leader is a skill that has to be developed. And I want to talk about your romance in your book, because in your author bio too, you talk about kind of specifically how you write your characters differently and how you love exploring these female main characters that have these kind of like maybe more traditionally male positions, or they've got these trainings or these experiences that kind of set them apart. And that for the romance is it's not about, oh, I've fallen in love and I'm now complete, or I am now in love and it's just done, it's easy, but that there's a lot of pressures and complications and context and all these things. So I want to ask, is what issues do you commonly see in romance books that you were like, I kind of want to write this a little different?
Great question. I think the fallacy that once you fall in love, everything's easy. I know from experience that just because you fall in love, love doesn't conquer all. Like you have to work for it sometimes. And sometimes it means there's a lot of barriers to clear and you really have to make hard decisions in life. So finding your male main character, your true love, it doesn't clear every obstacle. You still have to figure it out. And so that was one of the things that I wanted to be sure that I showed to my readers. I also wanted to be sure that I showed my readers that no woman should have to lessen herself just because she found love. I felt like there's so many, especially like early Disney movies, right? She's strong, she's capable, she has all of these abilities, and then she finds her true love, and all of a sudden, like, oh, I'm gonna go off and be a housewife. Girl, you were so strong. What? No, be strong. Honestly, I think it was Shrek 4 or 5 was the first time I saw, like, hi, I'm a mom, or hey, I'm pregnant, and this does not define me and it does not stop me.
Mm.
Um, which is really shocking to say about a Shrek movie. But I wanted that level of competence, right? Like, I didn't want the competence to go away just because you fell in love. Because that's not the
Mhm.
real world, right? Like, you don't fundamentally change as a human being. You fundamentally stay the same as a human being because that's the person your spouse, your partner, your true love fell in love with. And if you're just suddenly changed, like you changed the entire story. And so I wanted to
Mhm.
be able to show that true love is being yourself, being seen, respected, and loved for yourself.
I remember when I started dating as a teenager, my dad sat me down and he was like, "The Disney movies are wrong. And if you're gonna fall in love with someone, you're not gonna fall in love and then that's that and happy ever after." He says, "You have to choose to love somebody continually. Every day you're gonna be working and deciding." He's like, "Every day you decide that you're gonna continue to be in the relationship or continue whatever you agreed upon." And that always stuck with me when I throughout my dating because I was like, even in my marriage now, because marriage is so hard. And I think about that I have to keep choosing to do this. I'm grateful that I keep choosing to do this, but that doesn't mean that it's always so easy to choose when you're fighting or things are going on, your external pressures, just life is so crazy. So I love when books show that. Like in your book, there is discourse between your characters about how are they going to make this work? Or is this the perfect situation for them to make it work? And they have to make those decisions. And that's what love is. Love is choosing somebody and figuring it out. And I love when books show that because that is how real life is. It's
Yeah.
not the reality TV show Love is Blind always
Oh
frustrates
my
me
gosh.
because
Yeah.
I do not believe that love is enough. Like, I've fallen in love with people, that does not mean that I can create a fulfilling, beautiful life with this person. Or,
Mhm.
like, love is not enough for it's good. I love love. But there's more. There's trust. There's hard work. There's dedication, loyalty, like those things that have to go into romance. And when you mentioned the Disney movies, I also thought about maybe that's why we love retellings so much, is because the Disney movies were our childhood. They set up almost great. And now as adults, we're like, but we need to see more. We need to see,
Complexity and depth.
yes, we need
Mhm.
to see in Shrek 4 her being a mom and still like existing and growing as a person.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I love that in your book. The romance felt very like, okay, there's romance, but we still have to like there's still life still goes on and we
Mhm.
still have to continue to figure this out. So the next topic I wanted to talk to you about was kind of your transition of being in a military environment and deciding to pursue also a creative art. And the more I'm exposed to the military, my husband's been in for only 2 years. So the more I'm exposed to it, the more I see, the more people talk about, oh, well, I actually write too, or I draw, or I like to sing, or I do music, or all these
Yeah.
things. And I'm like, you do not look like someone that paints or like you do not look
Yeah.
like I'm like, I'm judging a book by its cover. I am so sorry for like the stereotypes of what do military people do? But the more I talk to them, the more I learned that it's like how they kind of make this connection between the civilian world and the military world. Because when you enter the military, even just as a spouse, you kind of learn a different way of life and how you see the world. And there can sometimes be barriers to connecting with your civilian family members and so art I've learned from a lot of the service members is how they kind of keep in touch with that side of themselves or their family. So I want to ask is why do you think that service members are so drawn to creative arts?
That's a great question too. We as service members, we're drawn to the creative arts for a couple of reasons. One, especially for those of us early in a military career, it's being able to keep in touch with the things that we knew, we expressed before the military career. So it's really like coming back to your roots. And I think into the middle and later careers, it's therapy. There is a certain level of therapy because you can take what you've experienced and you can take the things that you've been through, and it gives you an opportunity to talk about it and express it in an indirect way. I don't have to walk up to somebody and be like, hey, oh, by the way, I've got PTSD from a whole bunch of stuff, right? It's nuanced. I've joked, but I'm honest when I talk about every single one of my books is addressing a specific trauma. My first book, one of the main background themes is military sexual assault, right? And the aftermath of something like that. The next one, it's addressing what is it like to have something horrific happen around you and how do you mentally process that? The third one, right? Like it's again, how do we mentally process these things while keeping our sanity? And then of course, Ballad of Ashes in Spring, I think diverts from more of the military themes to obviously I'm working through some mommy issues on that one. Well, also, I think working through hey, what is this strange loneliness that we feel in a society that supports but is so apart? And I think that the arts give us all the ability to express something so complex in a way that can be simplified without losing the meaning.
when you mentioned the author in the beginning that you really love how he can kind of mention truths where it doesn't matter what side of it you're on, but you still feel a connection to it. I think that's what like art, writing, singing, like even before my husband was in the military, I don't even know what they're called, the like little ditty songs that I hear on TikTok or whatever, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm about to cry. This is so emotional. And my husband's like, you don't even know. You don't even know like the
Yeah.
extent of like the emotional connection of you're exhausted, you've run like a million miles. It's like you haven't slept in 24 hours and you're singing these songs anyway. So but it connects us from different lives, different you can't understand being in a military position if you haven't been in one. Like, even as a spouse, I'm like, I don't understand what you've experienced, but I can have empathy for it as best as I can. But reading my husband's books, I'm like starting to see a little bit more of the emotions and the experiences that he went through. And I think that's why art is beautiful for all people, is that it really does connect
Mhm.
different people that have had different experiences.
There are still some experiences, just humans under stress, that you can express in a creative way and it's still accessible. And I think right now my greatest example is the television show The Pit. I don't know if you've seen it at all. It's a medical drama in an ER, but the way they portray the stress, the high impact, like how fast things have to happen. I am not a medically trained professional. I'm like, I'll put a Band-Aid on your boo-boo. Like, that's where I'm at with this. But there is a part of me that I can look at this and I can identify with. This is an extremely stressful scenario, and these are all very human beings reacting in a stressful scenario, but it's real. And even like, and to me, like there's a lot of points where I'm like, sometimes I have to hit pause because I'm like, I have never been in an ER like this other than there's a couple of times I've been the one on the table. And I'm like, this is a little too real right now. Like they are portraying an experience that I have had and probably a lot of other military members have had in a way that is so visceral and real. And I think that a lot of us respect that type of art and that type
Mhm.
of portrayal. And there's just something in us that needs to come out in some way, whether it's therapy, it's talking, it's art. You need to put that out there for other people to see and be seen. I mean, like, the most amazing thing that anybody can tell me is they can read some of the stressful scenes in my book and just look at me and be like, I see you. I see that. I understand that. I didn't live that, but I see that. Right. And so
Yeah.
I think for any veteran or active duty, right, like when we are putting out that creativity, that art, the singing, the books, the poems, that's all we want. We just want that one moment to create something so real that we feel seen.
And that's why I love art because I love reading specifically or music. I grew up doing music and stuff, and it's helps bring people together from different experiences, and you can feel empathy or you can feel an understanding like to the side adjacent to the experience, but you can
Yeah.
still feel something and grow in your ability to see and work with people that think and are different than you. And that's something I think all people need to still work on, is how can we function in a society of people that have had different experiences, believe different things, different faiths, different politics, different just everything, but we're all still people at the end of the day. And we all need to have respect for each other and respect for what people are. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Respect and dignity for everyone you meet.
Yes, exactly. So thank you for being here to talk with me
Of
today.
course.
Just a couple final wrap up questions
All right.
so that readers can follow you and keep track of what's next. So, first one is, how can readers find you online and how can they support you?
So obviously I have my own author webpage. It's literally www.authorkrpaul.com. If you are somebody that's on Facebook, then you can find me at just author KR Paul. Just set that in your Facebook. If you are an Instagram person, then it's KR Paul Author. And then if you are on TikTok, which is where a lot of my videos show up, it's KR Paul Wigs N Fleck, and but N. There's a whole long story to how I got to that one. And I've got videos pretty regularly up there as well.
And I'll link all those in the descriptions. People can easily get to them. What books have you published, and then what are you still working on? In that question is how many books are planned in this
Okay. So the first one we have Pantheon, and that was the original one. This is the first one I got published. This is my old cover. I don't have my new cover with me right now, but Pantheon 2, Ares and Athena. You're going to start detecting a slight trend here. Then book 3, K.R. Paul, Return of Apollo. And then outside of my series, this is planned for 5 books. I have all my titles, I have all my covers, I have my entire like plot arc. I just have to sit down and put fingers to keyboard. So I have another 2 that are coming out. And then of course I have the Ballad of Ashes in Spring, which came out on the 20th. And I got to ask that question, how many more books and when are they coming out? I don't have a definitive number that are going to come out within the Ballad of Ashes in Spring. But given how many gods there are in just the pantheon, let alone like the demigods, lower gods, and that whole thing, there's a lot to delve into here. The next one that's probably coming out is one that is, the working title is The Himbo Mothman Who Loved Me. And that's going to get into a potential cryptid romance. And depending on how well that is received, there might be more. I only say this because I went to school in West Virginia. I had somebody basically like have me start in this as a dare almost, and 40,000 words later I'm still rocking and rolling. The sci-fi romance that I wrote, I've been told I need to turn into a full novel as well, so I have about 5 books in the hopper right now, plus the one from back in 2009 that probably needs some serious editing, if nothing else, for the dialogue, and then we'll see where we can go from there. So there is a lot more coming. I probably have another decade's worth of books just from the ideas I have right now and the things that are started right now. So if you just look for author K.R. Paul, that will probably point you at most of the stuff that I have.
That's awesome. And it probably feels good when someone asks, what else are you writing? Or when can I expect the next thing? These readers, myself, were like, come on, author. I know I just read this book yesterday, but where is the next one? Like, it's like, we're not grateful, but we are.
Right.
So thank you.
I remember publishing my 3rd book in the series, and that like literally that day, somebody's like, yeah, so when's number 4 coming out? I'm like,
You're
bro,
like, oh my gosh.
Bro, literally just finished.
Give me a break.
Well,
so that's awesome. It sounds like you have a lot of writing ahead of you. So what would you say is your long-term vision for your writing career?
Well, so I'm active duty right now. I'm looking forward to retiring here in the near future. And based on that, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom and a full-time author. Heavy emphasis on the full-time author. So at that point in time, I can really accelerate how quickly books are coming out. And hey, circling back to the literary agents that said I was a good author, but I just couldn't match their timeline. Yeah, I'm probably back to 18 months, every book, 18 months or less. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's awesome. And my final question that I like to ask every author, because I find it to be so insightful and beautiful and motivational, is why do you write?
Because there is always a story inside of me that has to escape. My imagination is probably one of the strongest things in everything that I've got, and I can't make it quiet. I can't make it shut up. It's always there. And writing gives me that opportunity to give it wings, let it fly, and release it into the wild where it's everybody else's problem now.
I love that. Thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you.
I can't wait for more people to read your books and for more books to come out. I will wait patiently, but definitely follow along for what comes next from you. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.